everybody, I am Danny Otto. Welcome into another episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we start the episode, just wanted to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in the first episode of the new Last of Us series from HBO Max. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to HBO Max, check that episode out, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from episode 1 of The Last of Us series, it's Jon Jon Rico.
Hi.
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 Very excited.
Oh, yeah.
So we're ready to talk video games. We're ready to talk this new series, live action. We're ready to talk about all the stuff.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just get right into it. I have a pop culture reference, but it's more comparing to another TV show than it is to, throwing out like a little funny thing. Because we're getting into a post-apocalyptic series. And it brought up another post-apocalyptic series that was also an adaptation. And I'm not talking about another video game adaptation. I'm talking about a graphic novel adaptation. And I'm talking about The Walking Dead. And I loved this first episode of The Last of Us, but just watching it, and I didn't play through the video game like in prep for the show. I've played the original video game before, but I haven't played it in a while. So both of us, we talked about this. We know a lot of the key events. We remember some of the stuff that's going to happen, some of the stuff that happened in the first episode. But I was kind of trying to watch it through fresh eyes, basically, as if I'm watching this for the first time and watching these events happen for the first time. And I was getting major Walking Dead, opening episode vibes where, we are introduced to normalcy for a character, and then immediately it's ripped away, and then we just see, chaos unfold for either one character or a group of characters, and how well they're able to kind of, in a very short amount of time, show us the how the world was, and then immediately rip it away and show us the disaster that the world has become in such a short period of time. And I think they did it really, really well, just like they did in that opening episode of The Walking Dead, to really like grab your attention, get you into it immediately, and get you, that sense of suspense, that sense of fear, the sense of like chaos and just not knowing what's happening and what's going on type of thing. I really enjoyed that. And I have not really felt that since, I guess, the opening season of The Walking Dead, really, where like you immediately are thrust into this like chaos, and it really, and I mean that in the best way possible, where they're very, very, very similar in the sense of like, you have the post-apocalyptic world and dealing with not only a zombie-like threat, but also humans and stuff like that. And I'm really excited to see, everything moving forward. But I could go on and on forever. Rico, what were some of your initial impressions of the show, this episode, and everything?
Yeah, so I have some pretty high expectations for the show coming into it. Of course, this is arguably a top 3 game of all time for me, as far as like experiencing the story all the way through. I don't think I've ever had an experience quite like the first the Last of Us game. So when I found out this was happening, and of course that Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey were cast as Joel and Ellie, I was really excited, and even more so knowing the fact that Neil Druckmann and the showrunner behind Chernobyl are both behind this. It's just like, it just has all the makings for like a massive hit for not only just video game adaptations, but for HBO just in general. Just like that Sunday week to week show that you're talking about as it's going on. This is going to be that one that like I feel like most of the general public probably wouldn't see coming just because, oh, it looks like a zombie show or so that. But this
Yep.
is going to be a as we learned in this first episode, it's going to be a gut wrenching journey about like this. And we've seen the lone wolf and cub story done many times. I mean, hell, Pedro Pascal is doing it right now with the Mandalorian as well.
Yep.
So it's like it's nothing strange for him. So it's actually really like fitting for him to be in this role of Joel, and I think he's doing a great job of making the character his own. Because if you know Joel in the game, like he's got like this more kind of like gruff like Texas accent, of course, but that's very much like Troy Baker's take on Joel. But Pedro makes this like his own, and but still kind of sticks to the key qualities of what makes Joel the person that he is, both in the early life before all this happens and the person that he ends up becoming 20 years later, which that's also another thing I was actually pretty fascinated by how big the time jump was, because I'm pretty sure the events of the game happen pretty quick. Like it's not that big of a time jump, I feel like. But yeah, and then we're later introduced to Bella Ramsey as Ellie, which again I felt like she encapsulates the character really well. And we only get like a small glimpse of the dynamic between her and Joel at the end of the episode, but I can already tell it's going to be something that I'm going to love as the season progresses. But yeah, so like you were talking about earlier, like the way they were kind of building on like suspense and fear, like they really built on like that kind of forecoming dread that really got to happen. Like, of course, we all know it's got to go down like later on that night, but everything that they did leading up that was perfect. Like the opening scene with the 1960s talk show, I feel like laid the groundwork perfectly for what the show is going to be about. And again, it adds some really cool context to the world of The Last of Us that the games didn't give us, of course. So that's also what I love, that the show's going to give us stuff that even the video game players are going to be like, oh, we didn't know that before, or they got to throw in little new things for us to be surprised about as well. So all in all, chef's kiss for the first episode.
I absolutely agree with that. And as you were just talking about the opening 1960s scene, a pop culture reference immediately popped into my head. It's Jonathan from The Mummy.
Good. That's good. I like this fellow. I like him very much.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah. And the host was one of the guys from Silicon Valley. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all these guys.
Right. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I love how they gave us a slower build. And that's the type of suspense that is perfect, because they're like, look, a ton of people that are going to tune into this know this by the brand already.
Right.
But we're going to, we're going to give the payoff, like the key events we know that are going to happen.
Right.
But getting there and having this slower burn to start, it just adds to this. Because I was telling you, I was like, I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. When is it going to happen? Like, I knew what was going to happen at night, but like every instance, like I was like, it's going to happen now. Could it happen now? Could it happen then? Like, just having that added a level of suspense that I don't think I would have had as much had I not played the game already.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. I'm sure they have that in there for, the audience that has already gone through the game and is very aware of the events, that they're going to hit these key events, but getting there, they're going to take a little bit more time to build a suspense to it. And it really adds, it gives a special watch quality to both people who have never played the games and to people that have. And I think they do that really well. At least so far in this first episode, they've done that very well. I have to say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to kick this off with, and I think you were saying it perfectly when you were describing Joel and kind of his gruff personality and exterior, and obviously like living in the now post-apocalyptic world that he has been living in for 20 years after the death of his daughter from the very beginning. He's going to be very, gruff and that kind
cold.
of
Yeah. I think that cold is probably the better word I was looking for there.
Exactly. But it goes hand in hand with what I wanted to talk about. For my biggest takeaway was the scene where Joel and who was the name of Joel's companion? Why can't I think of
Tess.
Tess?
Yes.
Joel, Tess,
Great. She
and
was great too, by the way. I love
right,
Tess. Yeah.
right. I just couldn't remember her name. I felt really
Yeah,
bad.
no, but that character in general is a badass, and I think they did a really good job portraying her here with this actress.
Right. But when Joel, Tess, and Ellie are trying to escape, to obviously deliver Ellie to where she needs to be, where they meet up with the guard that he already knew. Luckily, he already knew him.
Yeah, they ran into him. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't immediately just start shooting. He asked some questions, but when we had the comparison, like he was going to shoot Ellie, and Joel instantly had that flashback of his own daughter about to get shot from the military when everything was first happening.
Yeah.
And we had just like
moment.
yeah, we had this rage-filled Joel moment. The instant parallel that I got from that, I paused the episode for a second. I was like, that's Logan. That's the intensity of Logan from the movie, from Wolverine. That is our Logan Wolverine intensity right there, protecting a child basically. And that I just got major vibes. I had a point. I mean, I thought it was the perfect full circle scene. I thought it was great, and it showed instantly that Ellie can trust Joel, because obviously he's willing to fight to the death to protect her from getting shot, and they've only just met, type of thing. So hopefully that trust level instantly happens from that. But it also just shows what Joel is actually capable of. And there was even previous to that, when they were first meeting Ellie, I remember one of the people in the thing said, "I know what you guys are capable of."
Oh yeah, he's got he had a reputation around there at that point. Yeah, for sure.
So then, I mean, not only does Ellie get to see that, but the audience gets to see what he's actually capable of when protecting someone that he's is trying to protect, basically. So I just thought the immediate comparison to that, it just immediately popped in my head. I had to point that out. But Rico, what were some of your big takeaways from this episode?
Yeah, one of the things I really like about kind of Joel's development in this was that one, you see like that caring, nurturing person that he is to Sarah in the beginning, and as all of that kind of goes down, you see how her death affects him to the point 20 years later he's just like, when we meet that little boy who we find out is infected and they have to put him down basically, and uh it's Joel who has no problem picking up and dumping him into the pile, which is
Yep.
a crazy kind of allegory or kind of comparison for what kind of happens, or like what happens to him later on, I guess. But yeah, I thought that was, oh man, it was really really powerful stuff. But I was going to say one thing when you were talking about Ellie watching him beat that man like pretty much to death. Well, yeah, definitely to death. But earlier in the episode when the old lady comes after them and Joel has to kill her, Sarah reacts very differently to that. She's very like sad, like, oh, you had to kill, like, because of course they're still processing what's happening. Of course, everything's still pretty fresh, but when you see Ellie watching it, she has like this kind of like almost like kind of like sadistic smile like on her face, like she's enjoying watching Joel doing what she does. So I thought that was really interesting to see. There's so many different little like parallels, of course, that we're going to be seeing between the two of them. Of course, being that like Ellie's kind of filled this hole in Joel's heart that we're going to end up seeing later on, of course. But yeah, I thought that was really powerful stuff. I want to talk more about like all the added context that they give to the Sarah's whole death, because really they make that whole first, like, I want to say 20-30 minutes all about her. Like, we're following her throughout this, again, making you as an audience member really kind of care about who this character is, as opposed to just being a kid who dies at the beginning of the game. And seeing kind of like all the little things that she does for Joel, and going like to the list to fix his watch, which is something that you kind of see him hinting at, like, oh, I wish I had a watch. Like, he does all these little things that like are hinted at visually that aren't just kind of like thrown in your face. So the attention to detail there is really really great. But even again, building more on like building that suspense and fear, just the way the old lady is acting when you see her. Like every time we saw her, we already know that she's showing signs of infections and stuff like that. And then of course like the kid in her classroom with like the wrist twitch, and then you hear like the slight cough and stuff like that. They do all these little things that just makes it like really like you just know something's going on. That's kind of what it is. Like it's just kind of like this overlying feeling of just like, what the heck, dude? Like this something's about to go down.
Yep.
And I love the way that it just kind of like they go and watch the movie, and then it builds right into what is the beginning of the game. Like her waking up in the middle of the night looking for Joel, like because that's how we're the viewer or the player first plays as Sarah walking through the house, and then eventually it goes into you go into Joel later on, but um everything that happens from that point, from them getting into the truck and all that, it's just done almost shot for shot. And I was blown away by kind of like the attention to detail they did, like as like everything from them passing the family to the burning farmhouse,
Yep.
and then going of course all the madness through the city, which was just wild. um I was just like, wow, it's just and of course the end result, of course, of Sarah's death is it hits probably harder in the TV show than it does in the game. I would say the game, it's a lot of it is Joel's acting, like, Troy Baker's voice acting that really hits hard on that part because, again, it's a little girl dying, but seeing it in like more of a live action state, of course, hits harder in an acting sense, an on-screen sense. So it
Right.
just kind of strikes a certain chord, I guess, especially I imagine for a lot of people who are parents as well. Um, but I also wanted to talk about another thing that you were mentioning about when Joel beats that man. You were talking about kind of like the primal kind of like feel, like the Logan part, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how I remember hearing the showrunner talking about this in like one of the after the episode kind of a things. I think it might have been from like the podcast, where he was talking about that, like the idea of like unconditional love, and how we always think of love as like this, like it's a good thing. Of course, love is a good thing, but there's a part of love which is like the parental love, where it's like it goes primal, right? So like that parental feel, you'll do anything to save your kid, even probably doing some bad things, but that's because you love your kids so much, which we're doing some pretty primal stuff, and that's what we see in Joel, which I think is going to be the really interesting character arc for him going on, like what we'll see him do uh for Ellie out of unconditional love. I think is going to be an interesting thing to look for in this season.
I totally agree, and I mean that's perfect, basically. The other thing I was going to mention when you were talking about this, and this was brought up by somebody far smarter than me, so I can't take any credit for it. But did you notice when Joel first pulls up and grabs Sarah? He has a wrench. And he knocks out the old lady with the wrench and kills the old lady with the
Mhm.
wrench, and then he drops it.
Yeah,
And like when it first happened, I was like, why would you drop it? Like
it's the
you need
game.
that. You have to have that. Someone pointed it out that in the game, melee weapons you only get 3 hits
Yeah,
with.
you only get a certain amount of hits with them. It's
Yeah.
all like utilizing resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every when he had the wrench in his hand, I'm like, oh my god, they use the wrench like they do in the game. Like
Yeah.
all the little things like that.
So he drops it because he can't use it anymore because it's
Yeah.
like the game.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome.
As soon as somebody pointed that out, that like I said, somebody far smarter than me, I just saw it when I was scrolling on TikTok. I was like, "Oh, you son of a bitch, you're right."
Those
He
are like
did-
the little attentions to details that we're gonna have to like look for as the episodes go by. Like whether it's like, them looting a certain item
right.
or like doing stuff like that. That's the stuff that I really enjoy seeing, like the showrunners having a lot of fun putting you can tell like that's the stuff that they like doing the most, is being like, well, I hope they catch that. I hope they catch this.
Yeah, definitely. I just had to bring that up because I thought it was amazing, and the attention to that detail I thought was perfect. And you want to get to some predictions?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, why don't you kick off predictions?
Okay, yeah. So obviously going forward, knowing what happens in the game, of course, it's hard to be like, I'm looking forward to seeing this happen or this happen, because I don't want to spoil it for people who are watching the show and want to experience it all for the first time. So obviously, I'm looking forward to seeing the story play out similar to the game. Um, Especially, of course, the on-screen relationship with the two leads. Of course, I feel like that's going to be, of course, the heart. Obviously, it's going to be the heart of the show, the those two, and but just the little glimpses we got, I'm ready for more. I want it. I think it's going to be funny. but also just kind of like heartwarming at the same time. And there's going to be some moments of brutality within it as well. So I think it's going to hit all the right notes. But I'm also excited to see again like the different twists and changes that they throw at us to keep the show fresh for the game players as well as the new viewers as well. So like I don't want to know what's going to happen scene by scene just because I played the game. I hope you want to like just like you did with this first episode. All just added context you added into certain moments. Uh, I feel like that's just gonna make this an even better show that not even just for a video game show, but just a great TV show. And I think that's what we have here. Possibly, it's just a really great TV show.
I mean 100% agree with you. Like we were talking about this when we were getting ready for this video and stuff. That same thing. I didn't really want to throw out oh, I can't wait to see this. I can't wait to see that happen.
Right.
But just like I likened it at the very beginning of this video, where I'm sure there were people that loved the graphic novel Walking Dead and then got ready for the TV show. And I mean, I know there are plenty of things, and same thing with Game of Thrones. I know you
Right.
mentioned that too. I'm sure there are plenty of things that happen a little differently, or things that they omit, and because TV adaptation is obviously going to be different, just in general of what
Yeah.
they need to do versus what they can't physically do, I guess. But I think, having that balance is key. And it's really cool to have that experience where you can enjoy it, still knowing what some of these big key events are, but taking that pace differently and throwing it there so that not only is it giving us, the people that are already kind of aware of the source material,
Yeah.
a good story, but also, just like you said, a good overall television show in general. Like it has that suspense there. It has that, that fear. It is like a Day of the Dead, like Walking Dead, Day of the Dead, like that kind of suspense is there. Like you knew something was eerie that entire episode, and
Yeah.
if you did like know
Children
what
of
was gonna
Men
happen,
type stuff. Yeah.
exactly. If you knew what was going to happen, you knew that you were like paying attention to like people coughing, or you're paying attention to people acting a little strange here and there and stuff like that, until it was like super obvious, like this is what's happening. But I just think they did it in a really good way. And I mean, I think overall the best way to do that is to make a good television show, period. Not just a good, Last of Us TV show, not just a good comparable to the video game, but to make it where you can please both ends of the spectrum of the audience. I
Right.
think, and I mean, we're basing this off of one episode, but I think so far, off of this that we've seen, this episode 1, I think they've done a very good job of that. So,
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
totally in agreement with you on that. There are so many things that I am interested to see. Like I like being able to follow these episode by episode and being able to recap and stuff episode by episode. But at the same time, man, I would have watched 3 episodes last night. Or
Oh, yeah, no,
the
trust
night before. Yeah, I would have watched 3 episodes like right away. And just sunk into. I mean, these episodes are gonna be long too. This one was like,
Well, yeah, I was gonna say this one was particularly long, but I feel like it had to be because one, you had to set up the person that one Joel is about to be, but also I heard the original ending was actually the ending shot of the episode was gonna be a shot of him dumping the kid just to kind of show where like he went and like boom,
oh,
yeah. So that's like, but then we would have never met Ellie
right,
or anything like that. So, and I feel like you have to introduce both of the main characters in the first episode, in my opinion. So
yeah,
going that extra little length to make sure you kind of give like you introduce her and also set up them meeting, I thought was yeah, for it was like an hour and 20, I feel like, or something. It was a pretty long episode. So yeah. I hope now that we got this premiere out of the way, we can kind of get back to like the normal pacing and kind of start just the story at because now we're off and running, right? Like they started the journey.
yeah.
So let's go.
And we ended it with that shot on the radio, and it was an 80s song, so we know it means trouble.
Trouble.
Trouble's a
Yeah.
coming.
That's another see, like even stuff like that. Like I love how Joel has like this little sister. I can go on.
Yeah, we can go on forever, but we could make this an hour and 20-minute episode, but we're not going to do that. We're going to keep our normal pacing episode. So I'm going to say what I always say. That's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of this initial episode? were you coming from the camp that's already played the game, or have you never seen the source material before? And how did you enjoy this? I'm very interested to see in the comments what you guys think, and what are you looking forward to happen, whether you already know things that are going to happen and you can't wait to see how we get to them, or if you're just, completely going in blind and you want to see, you can't wait to see this, and this happen. And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest video and audio releases. Bye, everybody!
Popping Off presents That Recap Show.